The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Right after 9/11, about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq."
They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq. All right. Who knows who that was? Seriously. Do you know who that was? Do you recognize that voice? Let's see who's been paying attention over the past many, many months. Okay, that was General Wesley Clark, and that was in 2007. I've played that before. I've referenced that before. But you know what? We're going to give the entire clip a listen again today because honestly, man, this stuff it really is complicated, but I feel like there are a few things over the many years that are really just worth getting a total grasp on and internalizing, because honestly, I think they have such incredible meaning and, quite frankly, incredible potential to help us figure out what's going to happen next. And so where he just said they just made the decision to go to war with Iraq, I'm telling you, man, I am really not liking what I'm seeing from the Trump administration. And I feel like they're going to, quote unquote, just make the decision to go to war with Iran. And I'm not even kidding. And by the way, happy NoRuz to all of my Iranian friends and to everybody, actually. So yesterday was the Persian New Year, and we call it NoRuz. Some people call it Eid, E-I-D. But anyway, it's basically the Persian New Year, which corresponds with the spring equinox. The Iranian calendar is actually incredibly accurate. But anyway, Happy New Year, everybody. I'm wishing everybody a wonderful, healthy, first and foremost, healthy year ahead, and then also a happy and peaceful year ahead. Although, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get the peaceful portion of it. But anyway, okay, moving on. You know, I honestly, man, I'm not really liking what I'm seeing from the Trump administration. And I will say, I've had a couple people send me DMs or text messages and say, "Hey, you voted for Trump. Do you regret it yet?" And I'll be very honest. I don't regret it yet, but I will say in integrity, in pure integrity, you know, if I get to a point where I do regret it, I'm absolutely going to say that. And I'm absolutely going to tell you guys, and I will post it. And I just feel like that's the right thing to do. And so I'm going to do that. I've kind of made that commitment with myself. You know, I will say I'm just highly disappointed at many things with this administration. Now, by the same token, before I get into the disappointments, I'm very, very happy about many things. Like, I do think ending the war between Russia and Ukraine is obviously fantastic, and hopefully that happens. I do think the steps that seem to be getting taken to, you know, solidify the southern border and stop the flow of, you know, illegal immigrants, I think that's great. I think that the Doge concept is great. I've talked about this before. I don't think their execution is great. I think it lacks true transparency. And quite frankly, I think I hope people are tired of, or get tired of, just believing anyone when they say, "Oh, we found and saved $100 billion. But, you know, they're not showing us anything. Where's the receipts? It's actually very similar to when they said, we stopped a $50 million payment or dispersal of condoms to Gaza, and they got billions of impressions off of that, and then that ended up being totally false. It wasn't Gaza in Israel, Palestine. It was the Gaza in Mozambique. So, I found that when they didn't come out and really correct that, I thought there was a lack of integrity in that. And so I think with Doge, I mean, again, it's like, show us, I'm so tired of the talk on both sides, quite frankly. I was tired of the talk on the Democrat side for 4 years. And, I've already grown tired in 45 days of the Trump side talk. I really have. And, I'll share again, even things like the so-called release of the John F. Kennedy files. That was such a joke. I mean, that was such a joke. It's just so completely obvious what they're doing. Same thing with the Epstein files. This is actually pretty funny. Yesterday, I was going to post something just kind of for the Persian New Year. And then I got a memory. I got one of those memories on my phone. And it was 2 years ago where I basically used ChatGPT to explain what the Persian New Year was. And in my heading, I said, Happy Persian New Year to everybody except those people responsible for not releasing the Epstein files. And I'm sitting there looking at that yesterday, laughing, going, I could literally post this again verbatim, because here we are 2 years later and a different administration, and we're still not getting the real Epstein files. That's the other thing. There is no chance that whatever they end up releasing to the public, next week or the week after, there's no chance this is the truth and the real Epstein files. They will redact so many things. They will actually hide, probably the names of the people in the Epstein files that are now, supporters of the Trump administration. They'll probably, they'll absolutely hide those people. Will they hide Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Reid Hoffman, the folks that, again, supposedly are against them? I don't know. We'll see on that. But anyway, I'm not happy about all that stuff. I'm really not. I feel a real lack of integrity in terms of the way this administration has basically acted versus the way, they talked the talk, but they're absolutely not walking the walk. Okay, anyway, let's listen to a little more of this General Wesley Clark take. And remember, this entire interview that he did with Democracy Now! And Amy Goodman back in 2007 was based on him going to the Department of Defense in 2001. And it was right after, the 9/11 attack. And obviously before we decided to invade Afghanistan, invade Iraq, get into that forever war. But I'm going to play you a little, and then I'm going to comment here and there, because again, I really think it's important to grasp this because it's so relative to what's going on today.
He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail.
That's a pretty good analogy. If the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. That's pretty good.
So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
All right, so I don't know if those countries were necessarily in order, but let's go through them. He said Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Iran. Okay, check this out. So Iraq, cross them off. That absolutely happened, and that involved obviously the overthrow of Saddam Hussein and all of that. By the way, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode with Elijah. I think that kid is so sharp, man. I really do. Maybe he's my new bromance outside of Professor Jeffrey Sachs. But if you didn't get a chance to listen or you don't know who I'm talking about, Elijah Kallenberg is I believe he's a senior now at the University of Texas, and he is a Jewish American student activist and political commentator, which is crazy that as a 21-year-old, he's a political commentator. But anyway, he just has in my opinion, just such a great way of explaining things, and his knowledge base for any age is just exceptional, let alone a 21-year-old. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to yesterday's interview, I think he makes a lot of good points. And so, we talked about the next one, Syria. We've talked a little bit about Syria. Bashar al-Assad, that was the dictator that was overthrown. And again, I guess I would have to say define dictator. Now, again, I think I said this. Actually, I did say it yesterday on the episode with Elijah, or was that with Greg Stoker? I think it was with Greg Stoker. I said, hey, Assad probably was a bad guy. I mean, from all intents and purposes and what I've heard from Syrian people, he was a bad guy. He wasn't a good guy. But was he bad for the reasons we were told? So that becomes the question. But Syria was the second country General Wesley Clark said. So, there you go. Cross them off. Lebanon, cross them off. Lebanon is Hezbollah and all of the chaos that's happening right now in Lebanon is part of that. Now, remember, he made that interview in 2007. Now, granted, he basically said that was from 2001. And so that was the plan over 7 countries over the next 5 years. So technically, that all should have been completed by 2006. Which obviously didn't happen. Here we are, 18, 19 years later, but we're coming up on that, So country number 4 was Libya. That's the whole Muammar Gaddafi. If you didn't get a chance to listen, there's a whole episode dedicated on that. So that's Libya. Cross them off. Somalia and Sudan, I'm going to cross these two off because I know there's been crazy chaos in both of those countries over the past several decades. I don't really know much about those two countries, so I will absolutely research Somalia and I'll absolutely research Sudan and come back to you guys on that. And then number 7 is Iran. And I hate to say it, man. I really hate to say it. And honestly, this has nothing to do with the fact that I was born there, and this has nothing to do with, I guess, my being Iranian. I mean, I guess it kind of does, because I don't want anything bad to happen to my family that's over there. But this is more of a big picture statement to where I feel like the only thing left on the table as a major distraction or a major creation of chaos is gonna be war with Iran. And I'm just getting that vibe from the Trump administration. And I think it's going to happen for all of the wrong reasons. Now, I will get into that in another episode, but the reason I wanted to play this General Wesley Clark, full interview is because I think it's so good, and I've never played the interview in its entirety. I've only basically played what you've heard up until now. So let's give a little listen to the next step or phase that he talks about.
So go through the countries again.
Well, starting with Iraq, then Syria and Lebanon, then Libya, then Somalia and Sudan, and then back to Iran. So when you look at Iran, you say, is it a replay? It's not exactly a replay, but here's the truth.
This is interesting. I mean, again, this is 2007 that he's saying this, but I almost feel like this could be him right now saying, okay, Iran is going to be a replay or not exactly a replay. But my point is, again, I feel like something's coming with Iran.
That Iran from the beginning has seen that the presence of the United States in Iraq was a threat. A blessing, because we took out Saddam Hussein, and the Baathists. They couldn't handle them. We took care of it for them. But also a threat because they knew that they were next on the hit list. And so, of course, they got engaged. They lost 1 million people during the war with Iraq. And they've got a long and unprotectable, unsecurable border. So it was in their vital interest to be deeply involved inside Iraq. They tolerated our attacks on the Baathists. They were happy we captured Saddam Hussein.
I don't really know what he means about the attacks on Baathist. I don't even know what that is, but I'll look that up and get back.
But they're building up their own network of influence, and to cement it, they occasionally give some military assistance and training and advice, either directly or indirectly, to both the insurgents and to the militias. And in that sense, it's not exactly parallel, because there has been, I believe, continuous Iranian engagement. Some of it legitimate, some of it illegitimate. I mean, you can hardly fault Iran because they're offering to do eye operations for Iraqis who need medical attention. That's not an offense that you can go to war over, perhaps, but it is an effort to gain influence. And the administration has stubbornly refused to talk with Iran about their perception.
Okay, when he says the administration has stubbornly refused to talk with Iran about their perception, I'm going to make an incredible analogy, I think. Don't you love it when I pat myself on the back before I even say something? Okay, so the administration he's talking to is the Bush administration because, again, remember in 2007, George W. was still the president. And so the fact that they did not engage Iran in any type of diplomacy, what does that remind you of? It should remind you of 2020 to 2024 and the Biden administration not engaging with Russia and Putin in order to try to bring the Ukraine war to an end. And so now think about it. In 2007, that was the beginning, well, 2002 or 3 was the beginning of the entire, forever war, military industrial complex, money machine in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so why engage with Iran and try and bring diplomacy into the mix when you don't want diplomacy? You want to have war in Iraq and Afghanistan. You want to have tension. You want to have chaos, because without that, you can't have an $850 billion defense budget. And now bring that forward to 2022 with the Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And why did the Biden administration not at all want to engage with Russia and with Putin? Because they didn't want that war to end. You know what I mean? That was, gosh, $200 billion. We've talked about this before, but I'll say it again. Zelensky said we only got $75 billion, which is still insane. So where'd that $125 billion go? That's nuts. So seriously, look at the parallels. And again, you're talking about a Republican administration in the George W. Bush era, in Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, a Democrat administration with Biden, Ukraine, Russia, all that. Seriously, I don't know, man. This stuff really... God, it's really eye-opening for me. It really is. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone in this, or hopefully, you kind of see what I'm seeing. And again, I guess the question you should ask yourself is, you know what I'm going to say? Is it plausible? Is all of this stuff plausible? Is it plausible to be at war on purpose? I think it is, man. I think it is. I think money is the key to end all your woes, your ups, your downs, your highs, and your lows. Won't you tell me last time that love bought you clothes? It's like that, and that's the way it is. Who knows what I just sang? That was Run DMC, baby.
In part because they don't want to pay the price with their our U.S. domestic political base, the right-wing base, but also because they don't want to legitimate a government that they've been trying to overthrow. If you were Iran, you'd probably believe that you were mostly already at war with the United States anyway, since we've asserted that their government needs regime change.
there's that term regime change again. And you know, I've always thought over all these years, why has the United States not made regime change in Iran? Because honestly, I think if they want to, they could do it within 24 hours. I'm not even kidding. And honestly, the answer that I've come up with, and I think it's been because of the past year of talking all this stuff with you guys, is I don't think they want regime change in Iran. I don't think they want a government in Iran that loves the United States and we're BFFs. Because again, you need an enemy. You always need an enemy. You always need a big bad wolf. You need a boogeyman. And I genuinely don't think they want a friendly regime in Iran because they like it like this. They really do. They like it like this. And who knows? Just like I think Hamas is fake. I mean, I'm not kidding, man. Who knows what conversations are being had at the highest of levels?
So, and we've asked Congress to appropriate $75 million to do it, and we are supporting terrorist groups, apparently, who are infiltrating and blowing up things inside Iran. And if we're not doing it, let's put it this way, we're probably cognizant of it and encouraging it. So it's not surprising that we're moving to a point of confrontation and crisis with Iran.
That's the statement that to me is so wild that he's saying it in 2007, and I think it's going to come to fruition in 2025.
My point on this is not that the Iranians are good guys, they're not, but that you shouldn't use force except as a last resort. There is a military option, but it's a bad one.
I wanted to get your response to Seymour Hersh's piece in The New Yorker to two key points this week, reporting the Pentagon's established a special planning group within the Office of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to plan a bombing attack on Iran, that this is coming as the Bush administration and Saudi Arabia are pumping money for covert operations into many areas of the Middle East, including Lebanon, Syria, and Iran, in an effort to strengthen Saudi-supported Sunni Islam groups and weaken Iranian-backed Shias. Some of the covert money has been given to jihadist groups in Lebanon with ties to al-Qaeda.
Oh my God, this is so wild. So, okay, couple points on that. And I know this is, again, complicated, but let me connect some dots for you guys. So first of all, you know, isn't it interesting that George W. Bush at that time was also buddy with Saudi Arabia? I told you, Saudi Arabia, those guys, they're snakes, man. But again, maybe I shouldn't even say that. Maybe they're smart, actually, because they protect their own country and they'll basically sell their mother to the highest bidder. And they're always playing both sides of everything. So that's one interesting thing. The other thing he's talking about funding militia groups that have ties to al-Qaeda, that's actually the guy that right now is in charge of Syria. Remember, I've talked about him before, Jelani, but then they changed his name. He had like a total Extreme Makeover Home Edition or Extreme Makeover Person Edition, and they've completely turned him into this Zelensky-looking person. But who he's talking about, and again, this is wild, it's 2007, it's that same guy, Jelani, who at the time was in prison. They let him out of prison and then funded his chaos. Isn't that crazy? Like that's all stuff from 2007 that's still playing out till right now.
Fighting the Shias by funding with Prince Bandar and then with U.S. money not approved by Congress, funding the Sunnis connected to al-Qaeda.
Okay, more connecting the dots. So when she says funding with U.S. money not approved by Congress, that's what that USAID money was. That's really what that is. That's that entire USAID, you know, the thing that Elon Musk and Trump, supposedly just shut all of that down. So that is what that whole program was built to do. And then the other thing is, we haven't really talked about this, and maybe I'll try to do an episode on it. Gosh, I should do an episode for my own knowledge base more than anything. But Shia and Sunni Muslims are the two factions of the Muslim religion, and Iran is Shia Muslim, and then most of the Arab nations are Sunni Muslim. And again, supposedly they are absolute arch enemies and they absolutely hate each other, like in a visceral, vitriol way. But it's interesting that sometimes when it makes sense, they partner up on things. That's why, man, I question all of that stuff. But anyway, I'll do a deep, shallow dive on Sunni and Shia Muslim. Honestly, it's so ridiculous. I'm so uneducated about the Muslim religion. And then, that USAID, there's another dot that gets connected with what's taking place now. And then, like I said, the funding of those militants with ties to Al-Qaeda. That's that Jelani guy who now is in charge of Syria after they overthrew Bashar al-Assad.
Well, I don't have any direct information to confirm it or deny it. It's certainly plausible.
It's certainly plausible. Nice one, General Wesley Clark.
The Saudis have taken a more active role. The Saudis...
you were just in Saudi Arabia. You just came back from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, well, the Saudis have basically recognized that they have an enormous stake in the outcome in Iraq, and they don't particularly trust the judgment of the United States in this area. We haven't exactly proved our competence in Iraq.
You know what I just thought of? God, I think I played this already, but it's only a minute long. Let me see if I can find it and play it again. Remember the Trump interview in 2016 on CNN with Jake Tapper? Actually, this was before he became president. This was like the lead up to running for president. Here, let me find it.
But you also recently said that the Middle East would be better off with Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, and Assad in power. How does...
I didn't say Assad, but we certainly have not gained anything with Gaddafi. And you look at what happened. I mean, look at Libya. Look at Iraq. Iraq used to be no terrorists. He would kill the terrorists immediately. It was like, now it's the Harvard of terrorism. Iraq. If you look at Iraq from years ago, I'm not saying he was a nice guy. He was a horrible guy. But it was a lot better than it is right now. Right now, Iraq is a training ground for terrorists. Right now, Libya, nobody even knows Libya. Frankly, there is no Iraq and there is no Libya. It's all broken up. They have no control. Nobody knows what's going on.
The world would be better off with Saddam Hussein
100%.
And Gaddafi in power?
100%. Now, as far as Assad is concerned,
what about the human rights abuses?
Let's talk about, well, you don't think they're happening now? They're worse now than they ever were. People are getting their heads chopped off. They're being drowned. Right now, they're far worse than they were ever under Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi. I mean, look what happened. Libya is a catastrophe. You look at our ambassador as an example, okay? Libya is a disaster. Iraq is a disaster. Syria is a disaster. The whole Middle East. And it all blew up around Hillary Clinton and around Barack.
All right, man, I agreed with everything 2016 Trump said there, except the end. It didn't all happen around Hillary Clinton and Obama. Libya did, and Gaddafi did. But it all really started, honestly, with George W. Bush, man. That neoconservative little faction with him, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Condoleezza Rice, Paul Wolfowitz, all those guys, the neocons. All right, quick shift in clips from General Wesley Clark. I listened to the rest of that interview that he did, and there wasn't anything else good there. But anyway, this will be the last clip for today. Give a listen to this. This is super interesting. This was another clip by him. You know, I really like this guy, and I have to research him a little more. I'm a little surprised he has not kind of become more prominent. Well, I guess I should say I guess I like him only just based off these couple clips. Maybe there's more to him that I don't know. But give this a listen. This actually, I think he ties together this entire episode and many of the things we've talked about in terms of the neocons.
What happened in 9/11 is this country was taken over by a group of people with a policy coup. Wolfowitz and Cheney and Rumsfeld, and you could name a half dozen other collaborators from the Project for a New American Century. They wanted us to destabilize the Middle East, turn it upside down, make it under our control. Now, did anybody ever tell you that? Was there a national dialogue on this? Did senators and congressmen stand up and denounce this plan? Was there a full-fledged American debate on it? Absolutely not. And there still isn't.
Oh my God, that was so good. That was so good. And that, again, I think is from 2007. Okay. All right. Listen, that's it. Listen, everybody, I understand this is a little deep, and I know a few people have kind of messaged me and they're like, dude, start talking about AI again and tell us more about your cholesterol levels, which I will. I promise I will. But I'm telling you guys, this is important stuff. It really is, because this is going to affect the rest of the year. And this is going to affect the economy. It's going to affect, gas prices. It's going to affect food prices. It's going to affect the stock market. It's going to affect everything. I truly feel like the Trump administration, man, I think they're going back to the George W. Bush playbook. I really do. I can't even believe I'm saying that. I seriously can't. And I wish I wasn't. But anyway, this stuff is important. I really hope you realize that, we're on the verge of potentially something not good. Now, again, I hope I'm wrong in all this. I really do. And anybody that knows me in real life knows I'm not a, Debbie Downer, glass half empty guy, but I'm just calling them like I see them. I really am. And again, I'm not seeing what I thought I would see out of Trump, really. And it's very disheartening. It's very disheartening. So anyway, all right, that's it, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. More to come. Good stuff. Call a spade a spade. Enjoy your weekend. Get out there, get some sun, get some steps in. Talk to you later.
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.